Mary Kathleen Schlais was born on November 11, 1949, in Champlin, Minnesota, where she grew up alongside her two brothers. She attended Anoka High School before enrolling at the University of Minnesota. Mary graduated with honors, earning numerous scholarships and a degree in art. A talented artist, she was deeply passionate about painting, sculpture, and drawing, with much of her work centered on women's experiences. Mary exhibited her art at the Women's Institute for Social Change at the YMCA and dreamed of building a career as a professional artist. She was also an avid traveler, hitchhiking frequently to explore new places. Her love for languages led her eventually to study abroad, and she became fluent in German and Danish, while also beginning to learn Japanese. In February of 1974, Mary was living in the Kenwood neighborhood of uptown Minneapolis. She shared an apartment with her roommate, Judith, and had recently made plans to attend an art show in Chicago. On the morning of February 15th in 1974, at approximately 10:30 a.m., Mary left her apartment, carrying a cardboard sign reading Madison. She was dressed in a tan, furry winter coat and carried a purse, preparing to hitchhike, a mode of travel that she often used. Her destination was Chicago, where she planned to attend an art show. Watching Mary leave, Judith could not have known that she would be the last friend to ever see Mary alive. At around 1 p.m. that same day, Dennis Anderson, driving with his dog in Springbrook Township, Wisconsin, decided to take a longer route home, venturing onto a rarely traveled dead-end road. There, he saw two people fighting inside a small, gold-colored compact car. When Dennis returned later, he witnessed the driver discard a body into the snow-filled ditch. He saw this in his rearview mirror before speeding away. Dennis rushed home, dropped off his dog, and returned to the scene with his neighbor, Dan Murphy. By 1:15 p.m., they had discovered Mary's lifeless, bloodied body in a ditch near Elk Creek Lake. The suspect and his gold compact car were gone. The location Mary's body was found, near Elk Creek Lake, was approximately 90 miles from where she had began her trip. She was dressed in a maroon turtleneck sweater and blue dyed socks. An autopsy revealed that Mary had been stabbed at least 15 times, primarily in her neck, abdomen, and back, with defensive wounds on her hands, indicating a brave and fierce struggle. The cause of death was determined to be exsanguination due to multiple stab wounds. Both her coat and purse were missing. Investigators believed Mary was murdered either in the suspect's vehicle or another location before her body was dumped in the snowbank. Tire impressions at the scene were partially obscured by fresh snowfall, but an orange and black stocking hat containing hair fibers was recovered nearby. Blood under Mary's fingernails and on her clothing was also collected for future analysis. Witnesses described the suspect as a white male, approximately 6 feet tall and weighing 180 pounds, with a thick mustache and hazel eyes. Despite nationwide alerts and hundreds of leads, progress was minimal. The timeline of the crime suggested the killer drove directly to the dump site, covering the 90-mile distance in under 3 hours. An anonymous note sent to authorities in August of 1975 implicated the man who had discovered Mary's body, but Dennis was later cleared after extensive questioning, which included even hypnosis. By 1976, over 400 leads had been followed across the U.S. and Canada, all leading to dead ends. Police pursued numerous theories, including the possibility that Mary's murder was linked to serial killer Randall Woolfield, the I-5 killer, known for targeting petite women in their 20s. However, DNA evidence collected years later did not conclusively connect Woolfield to Mary's murder, and he was never formally interviewed about the case. Mary's heinous murder remained unsolved for decades, despite advancements in forensic technology. In 2009, investigators exhumed Mary's body for additional DNA testing, but the results did not provide any breakthroughs. However, the orange and black stocking cap found at the scene continued to be a critical piece of evidence. In the 1990s, a partial male DNA profile was extracted from hair fibers in the cap, but it did not match any profiles in the CODIS database. In 2022, the Dunn County Sheriff's Office partnered with the Investigative Genetic Genealogy Center at Ramapo College in New Jersey. Utilizing the partial DNA profile from the stocking cap, investigative genetic genealogy researchers identified familial connections, which eventually led them to John K. Miller, an 84-year-old resident of Owatonna, Minnesota. The investigation revealed that Miller had been adopted, which initially complicated efforts to trace his genetic lineage. Investigators confirmed Miller's connection through his biological daughter, who voluntarily provided her genetic profile. This breakthrough led authorities to determine that the DNA on the stocking cap belonged to her father. On November 4, 2024, John K. Miller was confronted with the DNA evidence linking him to the crime. Initially denying involvement, he eventually confessed to picking up Mary while she was hitchhiking. Miller admitted to making unwanted sexual advances, which Mary resisted. Enraged, he said that he retrieved a knife stored above the passenger seat visor and stabbed her fatally. He then disposed of her body in a snowbank, but fled after being spooked by a passing vehicle, leaving behind the stocking cap. Miller was arrested and charged with first-degree murder. The 84-year-old suspect appeared in court with a wheelchair, dressed in an orange jumpsuit. He is currently in custody, awaiting extradition to Wisconsin. Mary's family expressed gratitude for the relentless efforts of law enforcement and the genetic genealogists throughout the decades. The Sheriff's Department described the resolution as a landmark achievement, highlighting the significance of genetic genealogy in solving cold cases. Mary's murder was solved after over 50 years. Karen Snyder, originally from Cedar Lake, Indiana, was a young mother married to 23-year-old Paul Snyder. The couple had recently celebrated the birth of their daughter, Paula, just 2.5 months earlier. Karen was described by friends and family as a kind, likable woman who was close to her parents, Russell and June Neves, and her siblings. Her husband, Paul, worked the afternoon shift at a local railroad company, while Karen stayed home to care for their daughter. Shortly before 11 p.m. on November 12, 1966, Paul returned home from his shift. Having worked from 3 p.m. that day, Paul had grown increasingly concerned when his attempts to reach his wife by phone went unanswered. His worries deepened when his parents, Frank and Elizabeth Snyder, who lived just a few houses down, knocked on their front door around 8 p.m. and received no response. Upon arrival, Paul noticed several unusual details. The blinds were drawn, the front door was unlocked, and the porch light was off, which Karen always left on for Paul. Inside, he found the baby asleep in her playpen in the living room, with the television on and the TV guide open on top of it. As he climbed the stairs to the master bedroom, he tried turning on the overhead lights, but they did not work. Using the bedside lamp instead, Paul discovered a gruesome scene. Karen's lifeless body lay on the bedroom floor, surrounded by blood and signs of a violent struggle. In a state of shock, Paul immediately called the police, then took Paula and exited the home. The phone operator who received his frantic call also contacted his parents, who rushed out of their home to find their son sobbing uncontrollably in the street, shouting, quote, "Somebody help me, my God, somebody please help me." Paul's mother, Elizabeth, flashlight in hand, hurried into the house, hoping to offer aid to her daughter-in-law. But as she made her way to the bedroom, she quickly realized Karen was beyond saving. The authorities arrived shortly after. The young mother had been stabbed over 120 times, 90 times in the chest, 17 times in the neck, and 17 times in the upper back, with what the medical examiner said was a, quote, stiletto-style knife. Karen was fully clothed, and there were no signs of sexual assault. Investigators determined her time of death to be between 4 and 6 p.m. Evidence suggested the attack had begun in the living room. A trail of blood led from there up the stairs to the bedroom, indicating Karen's desperate attempt to escape her attacker. Her bedroom showed signs of a courageous struggle. The wooden footboard of the bed was splintered, the phone had been ripped from the wall, and blood was splattered across the walls and floor. A peculiar piece of evidence was a blood-covered light bulb found on the bedroom floor. This bulb was later determined to have been unscrewed from a fixture above the stairs. In the downstairs bathroom, police found a pile of bloody laundry, including 2 pairs of slacks, a sheet, and a washcloth, which suggested the killer attempted to clean themselves before fleeing. A broken window in the basement and superficial jimmy marks on the back door hinted at a staged break-in. Missing from the home was Karen's blue leather wallet containing $50, and curiously, one of the Snyder's matching table lamps was taken from the living room, a seemingly insignificant item. A trail of blood, believed to be the killer's, resulting from a cut when the window was smashed, led to the front door. Police noted that all the doors and windows had been locked from within, leading investigators to believe the killer likely entered through the front door, either by force or after being let in by Karen. Police questioned those close to Karen and Paul, including friends, families, and neighbors. Paul's mother, Elizabeth Snyder, revealed that Karen had confided fears about living in the house and had expressed a desire to return to her parents' home in Cedar Lake. Neighbors John and Rosalie Linda Barker, who lived nearby, reported that their dog, Nikki, did not bark that evening, a notable detail as he was known to bark at even minor disturbances. Rosalie was certain that if Nikki had barked, she would have heard it and would have gone to investigate. This suggested that Karen may have known her attacker and may have willingly allowed them inside. Initial suspicions fell on Paul Snyder due to the staged appearance of the break-in. However, forensic analysis cleared him when it was determined that the 2 types of blood that were present at the scene, type O, Karen's, and type A, the killer's, did not match to Paul's blood type. Blood matching the killer was found and collected near the broken window, in the bathtub's bloody laundry, and on the light bulb. During the investigation, police brought in 6 potential suspects, but narrowed it down to an unnamed 23-year-old local man, labeled Suspect Number 1. The man, an acquaintance of the Snyders, sought treatment at a hospital that same evening for a severe cut on his hand. The blood type matched the killer's, and witnesses placed him at 2 nearby taverns. His wife corroborated that he had come home late, drunk, with a stitched-up hand and a cut on his forehead. However, she said this was not out of the ordinary, as he was reportedly an alcoholic. Despite the circumstantial evidence, the man claimed he injured himself on a tree stump while walking home. With no concrete evidence linking him to the crime, he was released and the investigation stalled. Police Chief Lincoln Wicks disclosed to the media that additional evidence, including fingerprints, blood scrapings, and hair found in Karen's hands, was submitted to the Chicago Crime Lab for analysis. Detectives also examined a screwdriver found in the kitchen, but its relevance to the crime remains unclear. The brutal murder devastated Karen's family. Her mother, June, struggled with her faith and never fully recovered from the loss, passing away in 1977, just 4 years after her husband, Russell. Karen's daughter, Paula, was raised by Paul and his second wife, Connie, in what everyone around them said was a loving environment. Paul passed away in 1989 at the young age of 45. Years passed, and Karen's family, including her daughter Paula, continued to search for answers. In December of 2022, a man named Kevin Seeley, curious about the case after hearing about it from his grandmother, contacted the police. This led to the reopening of the case and a fresh investigation. Detectives spent more than a year re-examining evidence and tracking down witnesses for questioning. They sent clothing and a bedsheet to the Illinois State Crime Lab for analysis, and in March of 2023, investigators obtained a search warrant in Missouri and got a DNA sample from a potential suspect. In 2024, 79-year-old James Barbier was finally arrested after DNA evidence conclusively linked him to the crime scene. Barbier was the primary suspect number 1, questioned in 1966. He was a family friend who had worked as a railroad employee with Karen's husband, Paul. Sickeningly, Barbier was even a pallbearer at Karen's funeral and was observed there with cuts on his hand. Barbier was arrested in Missouri and brought back to Calumet City to face charges. He was released on May 2, 2024, with maximum pretrial conditions. Barbier was ordered not to leave the state. He also had to surrender his passport and firearms, and is required to report in person and by phone twice a month. After 57 years, Karen's family received the answers that they had been waiting for. Karen's daughter, Paula, upon hearing of Barbier's arrest, said, quote, "Mom and Dad, we got him." Despite this turn of events, the legal process continues, and the family is still seeking the ultimate justice. If you like what we do and want to see more, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Thank you so much to our patrons. If you would like to support this channel, you can visit the link in our bio below.